Earth Day has come again. It's a day that reminds us of all the global environmental catastrophes existing around the world, and our complete helplessness in them. Worst of all the threats facing Earth, aliens. Yes, those pesky aliens. Those who blend in with us humans and do nothing but sow the seeds of discontent, ruin our environment, and turn humans against each other. That's it. In my years of experience, as some guy on the internet, I have found the cause for all our problems. It's all reliant on one man. One that is the real problem. Not all the insurmountable problems that we've had to deal with over the course of human history. It's just this one guy that's the key to everything. That will solve my problems. And I know whose fault it is. What the fuck is this movie? I was just talking about some random stuff. How the fuck did this get on my screen? When a movie follows an unreliable character, it usually maintains some awareness of what that character is doing, peering into the reality to have the consequences of their altered perspective given gravity outside of it, making their motives for certain actions quite clear, even if conventionally illogical. This brings to mind many cases in movies, most obviously things like Fight Club, Psycho, and for the Zoomers out there, joke, these films usually submerge us in a perspective only to break back into a normal view of things, to give us a point of view of what is actually happening in the story. Then you get a film like Save the Green Planet, which blurs that line, managing to be effective as a story and a film without it falling into shambles. Upon Save the Green Planet's domestic release, it got less than favorable results. All things considered, the director made a flop. But once it hit the international film circuit, it found its audience, becoming more of a critical cult success and getting further recognition as a cult classic after being distributed on DVD under the Tartan Asia Extreme label. It's clear to see why both of these things happen. It's a film that takes many risks with how it presents its narrative that may, no pun intended, alienate some audience members. I mean, to give a one-sentence summary of this movie, it's what happens when Terry Gilliam is told to make a film somewhere between Misery and The King of Comedy, but gets lost frolicking in the main character's delusions, as edited by MTV. Save the Green Planet is a bizarre film, to say the least, in terms of tone and style. It's all over the place, in the best way possible. It goes from madcap insanity to full-on sincerity over its 2-hour runtime, allowing you to experience the main character's delusion before understanding how he became that way. The story follows a fellow named Lee, and his attempt to abduct a businessman who is an alien, or who he believes is an alien, while investigators try to figure out where that businessman went. The film focuses on the interaction these two have, as Lee tries to extract information about the alien invasion that he believes as an imminent threat. The film plays out similarly to Misery, as I mentioned before, where the captive and the captor are battling wits with one another, seeing them try to pull one off on one another. The CEO is obviously trying to escape, and Lee's trying to get information out of the CEO. And the way he does so is through the same way as it is in Misery. The torture on display isn't too gruesome, but it is intense. It doesn't take you out of it, but it does make you cringe. I mean, there's only little bits of it here and there, just like Misery. This might also stem from the style of the film and the narrative of the film being absorbed in the main character's perspective, where his story is sometimes given a more charitable light, sometimes not. There is a clear element of fantasy here, not just illusion, where we kind of see how he wishes things would turn out, like the scene where he is in this high-flying Power Rangers fight, which is just met with wild applause, revealing right after that this was just some guy in Lee's town giving him shit for buying random stuff. There's a push and pull between these elements in the film when it goes from the realistic to the fantasy without warning. It leads to some serious whiplash, but in my mind, that makes the story more compelling. And you can tell kind of visually and how some of the dialogue is delivered when these changes occur, even if it isn't as subtle as it was in that moment. For the most part, the film tends to stick with the main character's absurd point of view and how that looks. There is some grounding in reality in the narrative. Like I said, which comes in the form of the detectives who investigate the missing businessman Lee kidnaps. It's that secondary element that gives you context of why he is the way he is. seeing how they slowly figure out it's him, and also all of the extra things Lee doesn't tell you when you're following his point of view. Like all the other people he has done things to, the job he had before this, his life story, and his whole situation going with his mother. You kind of need that type of B-plot for this movie, especially when you're trying to balance delusion with reality. I mean, you could go full-on delusion, but you might lose a bit of your audience with that. And this way, you can allow the audience to see his story from an outsider's perspective and get some sympathy to many of his plights. Because, quite seriously, there are a lot of plights that this man, Lee, went through. That is what the film does best. It allows you to sympathize with this guy who's completely out of his mind, while understanding how he got there. It also does this weird thing near the end, where, in a way, he understands what he is doing, but through his own warped logic, he reaches that horrible solution. He understands that what he is doing is insane, specifically in one moment, and he has to ignore the fact that he's doing all these things without reason. That shows in the scene near the end of the movie when the CEO starts rattling off these realistic things that Lee can't deny, especially the fact that none of the people he has abducted turned out to be aliens. However, as soon as he is confronted with this fact, his mind veers completely away from that reality into complete fantasy, and he is sent down this long-winded explanation of the relationships that aliens have with humans and with Earth, and it is just fucking bonkers. And to best summarize the end of the film, it's very similar to that line from Shutter Island.
Which would be worse? To live as a monster, or to die as a good man?
And with that, Lee decides that he would rather continue in his lie to the bitter end than suffer through reality. That's why he continues to live on that lie, even when he is being lied to about that lie by the CEO, which leads to him ultimately getting bested. Which would you rather do? Live as a monster or die as a good man? Lee believes his sole purpose in life is to save the planet from aliens. In his warped beliefs, he believes that he wants to die as a good man. Living in this belief is the only thing that has sheltered him from the harsh realities that he's facing and that he's been put through in life. It's him coping through all the horrible things that have happened. This isn't him owning up to it and admitting that his deeds are monstrous. This is him trying to live in his mental illness as long as possible. But just for that split second, however, he knows that there's no way out, no way for him to save himself, and he decides to just go out swinging. The bleak reality of the ending is contrasted by the campy sci-fi twist it takes, but the lasting message is one that is burned in the memory. It's an exhibit of how far one is willing to go when they are continually pushed into a corner, and what that does mentally to someone. Save the Green Planet paints a picture of one's mind in that desperate, broken state. It has its moments of dark comedy and certainly flies off the rails into absurdity, but that ending still packs a wallop, even with its sci-fi camp, and leaves you sitting there questioning what you just watched. Regardless of whether the CEO was an alien or not, you can kind of see that the outcome was the same. I, for one, clearly enjoyed this film. I think it is probably one of the best films to come out of South Korea in that new wave they had back in the 2000s. And I'm interested to see how Yorgos Lanthimos works with the reimagining of this movie he's gonna do, that he is doing right now and is currently in pre-production for. I'm curious to see where he takes it, considering how drastic this film style is with any of his films. It's gonna be a bizarre ride. Damn, this whole thing really got me bummed out about the whole finding Elvis as an alien thing. Well, I mean, I have no means of accessing him anymore. I mean, he's been literally dead for 48 years. So I've been told. Which means there's nothing else I can do. Guess I'll just go back and join society and play some Garfield kart and something and listen to my fucking Justin Bieber like a normal human being. I'll see you guys in the next one.